Hi, how are you? Welcome to Pod Bless, Texas. I'm Kendall Scudder here at the Pod Bless, Texas World Headquarters here in East Dallas. Boy, do we have a treat for you this week, you lucky Pod Bless, Texas listener. Guess who our guest is today? Uh, some people know her as the first Democrat to represent Collin County in 35 years, but most people know her as a former third mic on Pod Bless, Texas. Uh, Representative Mihaela Plesa, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kendall. Hey, everybody. I am so happy to be back. Thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to this conversation.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Absolutely. Look, hard work, determination, when we have a clear goal and a clear mission, and we all row in the same direction, we can have, the impossible happen and we can elect a Democrat in Collin County. And it's the
But that's
honor and privilege of my life to be that person.
but that's the challenge, Representative Plesa. It's getting all the Democrats to row in the right direction. Am I right?
Well, I think that we're starting to see the blueprints in different, whether it's the municipal elections or state house races like mine. You can't argue against the results. And our opponents are right there. We can see them across the aisle. We need to start working together as Democrats. And we will start seeing things like Medicaid expansion, gun safety legislation being passed, and we can actually bring change to our communities. So I believe in it, Kendall. I still believe. I have hope.
I like your optimism. I love your optimism. Now, you actually are a rare example of a freshman who was able to get some bills passed this session. I want to talk to you a little bit about how your your first session was, but first, I want you to brag a second because for a freshman, you got a shitload of stuff done. So, what all did you get passed this cycle?
Oh my God. Look, I ran on being effective, not just getting elected, right? Campaigning is rewarding, but then you have to go down to Austin and you have to now work with 149 other members, 30 plus members in the Senate. If you can get your legislation out of the Senate, you have to be, somebody that has, uh, bipartisan support, because that's what the governor's office, that's what people look at when they bring your bills up, whether it's going to get vetoed or whether it's going to get signed by the governor. And we saw that this session, the governor went on a veto spree, 76 pieces of legislation, 73, 76, something like that, that he vetoed. And so I'm really, really honored that not only did we pass legislation, but they're meaningful bills. They're bills that people are going to feel immediately. So yeah, I mean, passed two pieces of legislation that I was the primary author on, but we went in and we co-authored 98 pieces of legislation, joint authored and co-authored 98 pieces of legislation that were signed by the governor. So everything from Medicaid expansion, the environment, public safety, seniors, LGBTQ legislation, we were out there trying to show our support and make sure that things actually passed.
Yeah. So hang on. You did you say Medicaid expansion signed by the governor? What was that?
Yeah, so House Bill 12 that Representative Tony Rose passed, it expands uh, care for postnatal care for mothers after they have their first or second child. And so this was something that Democrats had been fighting for many, many years. Texas is one of the only states to not have expanded services. And so I was really honored to co author this piece of legislation that was a priority bill for the Speaker of the House, and we saw that we had overwhelming support in the Senate, and the governor signed this. So I was really proud. That's just the beginning. We have a long, long way to go.
Yeah. So when you first joined the Texas House and you kind of walked in the door, like your backstory is a little different than most people who serve in the legislature, right? You actually did several sessions as staff before you walked in the door as a legislator. So, um, when you have 98 bills that pass, obviously you're not the one who personally writes all those things, staff does. So like what is the difference in between, the several sessions you did as a staff member who was on the ground working versus now that you actually are a member?
Yeah, look, some things are very similar. Some things are really, really different. Um, like I said, because I had that experience, because I had staff that had been in the building before, we were able to hit the ground running. So we weren't just working with our own constituents to file legislation, we were working with other members and other stakeholders. And we knew that we had a very large and robust legislative agenda, but so did the other members on the floor. So we weren't trying to file a bunch of redundant legislation. So when I saw that there were members like Ann Johnson, or even in my delegation, like Matt Shaheen or Jeff Leach, Republican Democrats that were filing similar legislation, I was immediately trying to approach those members saying that these are important issues as well in House District 70, and seeing how I can lend support, whether that was joint authoring their bill, co authoring their bill, advocating for that bill to be heard in committee. And so that's how we developed this robust legislative agenda. I myself personally filed over 50 pieces of legislation, working once again with my constituents, like House Bill 1275 that was passed and signed into law. That bill, I worked very closely with a resident of House District 70 who had some issues with taking care of not only her kids, but her parents, her mother as well. And her mother could not drive anymore, but there's a very long wait in getting personal identification, just a regular ID, not a driver's license in the state of Texas. So, working with the stakeholders, working with constituents, working with people who have had similar problems of getting a personal identification, we created House Bill 1275, which was signed into law. And now you can submit your driver's license, you can surrender your driver's license if you're over the age of 65, and you can renew for an ID online. Simple. You don't have to go to the DMV. You don't have to take time out of your day to take your family members to the DMV and wait. You can just surrender your driving privileges online, and they will immediately send you an ID. So I'm really, really proud, because those are the common sense kitchen table things that our constituents and the electorate expects from us.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, your district, I mentioned earlier, is in Collin County. It's House District 70. For the listener who may not know what all those numbers are and on all of that, what is your district? Can you describe geographically kind of what your district is, what's in your district?
Yeah, so I have most of my district is the city of Plano. House District 70 is in southwest Collin County, so right above Dallas County. Most, like I said, most of my district is the city of Plano, but I also have a large portion of the city of Dallas. So far north Dallas, which is in Collin County, which is in Plano ISD. I also am proud to represent one precinct in Richardson. This area is the UTD area. um, this is mostly the college students that live on campus in Richardson at the University of Texas at Dallas. And then I have one beautiful precinct in the city of Allen, who unfortunately has seen some horrible things happen this legislative session to that community. And I'm very, very proud to represent Allen and to fight for their concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't realize that you had one precinct of Allen. I guess you share Allen with Representative Leach, who's House District 67. Um, let's talk about that for a second. So, as listeners know, there was a horrific mass shooting that happened at the Outlet Mall in Allen, Texas this summer. Um, and it was while y'all were still in your legislative session. Um,
Yeah.
were you able to see any shift in perspective by some of those kind of gun rights over people rights representatives, or were you able to get any
Yeah,
traction on any of those
it
bills?
was it was surreal. House District 70 lost 3 constituents that day. I never in my lifetime would have imagined that, 5 months within my tenure that we would have a mass shooting, let alone, I don't look at the statistics now, but at the time, I think we were the second largest mass shooting in the nation. And there was a lot of conversation around mental health on the floor. There was a lot of conversation about bringing resources and not letting Texas be the last, on the list when we provide mental health resources or insurance coverage even for mental health. But unfortunately, we see legislation like the bill that I had with the National Association of Mental Illness be watered down. There are some representatives that showed political courage, that voted their constituents instead of towards a scorecard or for a special interest group. But we need more work, and we can't afford to lose more constituents this way, because I can tell you that immediately after that shooting, there was a lot of outcry for change and reform in red areas. These are gun owners. These are people that understand that we can protect the Second Amendment and second graders at the same time. And I pray that none of my colleagues have to attend funerals like I did this session. It was devastating. It's devastating.
Yeah. We are speaking today with Democratic State Rep Mihaela Plesa of House District 70. We're going to take a very quick commercial break, and we'll come back and continue this conversation. Pod Bless Texas is brought to you by Represent Texas PAC. It's the official PAC of Pod Bless Texas. If you want to help the folks that come on this podcast are hardworking Democrats around the state of Texas that are fighting to flip really tough districts, go to www.representtexaspac.org and make a contribution today. Represent Texas PAC is standing on the front lines and fighting like hell to make sure that we do what it takes to start flipping Texas blue. www.representtexaspac.org. Welcome back to Pod Bless Texas. We're talking today with State Representative Mihaela Plesa of House District 70, the first Democrat elected in Collin County in 35 years. Mihaela, a lot of people don't know your personal story. And I find that actually is pretty common with a lot of people in the state house. We have some really interesting people that we don't ever really get to dive into their backstory. You are the only Democrat who is of Romanian descent that's holding public office in America. Is that accurate?
Yes, I am. I'm one of 2 Romanian Americans elected in the nation. I believe there might be a third. They're in a mayor seat, but we haven't been able to confirm that. But yes, I am the only Democrat. The other elected official is actually the Speaker of the House in Arizona. So yeah, that gentleman though is born in Romania. So I was sure to let him know when I met him in DC that between the 2 of us, I'm the only one that can run for president. So
because you were not born in Romania.
No, I was born here. I was born in Texas, in North Texas, in Dallas at Medical City. My parents though are immigrants. My grandparents are immigrants. I grew up speaking Romanian in the home. I grew up eating Romanian cooking, attending a Greek Orthodox church that my family helped found when they moved here, because we were looking to create a community. We were looking to congregate as, an ethnic group. And so, yeah, I feel Romanian, but I also feel very much Texan. Like, I love Texas shaped anything, right? So
that is what it means to be a Texan, liking things shaped like that.
Yes. So yeah, I struggled because I was my first language was Romanian. I speak Romanian fluently. And so when I would attend primary school, first, second grade, I had language barriers. At Plano ISD did an amazing job trying to put me in classes where there was like an ESL teacher there. A lot of times they were a Spanish teacher because there weren't that many Romanian speakers in North Texas at the time. But now I can speak Spanish fluently as well, and it brings so many people into your world that you didn't expect. And so that's why I fight for those resources. Art classes, when I couldn't communicate with my teachers through language, I would like to use art or music, right? To show that I liked those things. I liked, participating in those things. And so that's why I fight for extracurricular activities. And that's why I fight for after school activities. We need to make sure that our public schools are funded. When I was a kid, like 1994, Brinker Elementary, the state of Texas was funding public education at over 50%. I don't think people understand that when they look at the budget and when we look at the amount of money we're putting into public education, that number has been cut, that we're defunding public education in the state. And we're doing it in ways that, so that politicians can still say we're making large investments, but we're not making the investments where it's going to really be felt by educators, students, and most importantly, parents and taxpayers, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's
I
a
think
little bit about me.
I think that that's something that I just, I mean, I'm aware of it, but I don't think I spend a whole lot of time kind of thinking about it. It's that there are, second language speakers, like English as a second language speakers who don't speak Spanish at home in Texas, right? And I mean, how challenging is that for school districts to be able to set up those types of programs? I mean, that's really tough.
Well,
What, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was going to say, like, Plano ISD, we have dozens of languages. And I just went and did a back to school drive, and it was so heartwarming to see all the different languages that the directions were posted in. So you had Farsi, you had Mandarin, you had Korean, you had Arabic. I mean, there were so many languages. It was so beautiful, and it really warmed my heart. I still didn't see Romanian up there. But I know that, immigrant mothers like mine would have really, they really benefit from having, not that they don't speak English, but that seeing that there just reaffirms that the community is supporting them. It's about the
Well,
parents, about the students.
yeah, forgive my ignorance on this. I'm not super well versed in Romania. There is a 90 Day Fiance cast member from Romania this season, so I feel like I'm
Oh,
about to get very educated. But what was happening in Romania that would have caused your parents to settle here in North Texas?
well, my father's family and my mother's family are very different, but very similar. My father's family immigrated here after World War II. My grandfather refused to fight for the Nazis essentially and defected and basically became a prisoner of war. But it was about freedom. It was about fighting for what was right. It was about not succumbing to dictatorship. My mother's family fled communism in the 70s during Ceausescu. Both those times were very, very oppressive times in European history. And I grew up hearing those stories. I grew up hearing about abortion bans in Romania and how traumatizing that was for families, how horrifying that was, how many women died, how many children became orphans, right? We saw an orphan epidemic in the 80s in Romania. Book bannings, creating these vigilante groups that we're seeing Republicans are attempting to create, right? These were things that I heard stories about, that I grew up about, that these were not, that's why we came to America, because there was freedom of speech, freedom of religion. There weren't oppressive governments, right? There was discourse, there was conversation. being had between both political parties. Those are the things that I grew up hearing, and that's why I fight for those things in the legislature, because I see so many similarities between what my family fled from, my parents and grandparents fled, and those policies being, initiated not just in Texas, but in a lot of places in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, so North Texas, is there a reason specifically that they chose North Texas?
For my father, it
Like,
was,
was there already
yeah, like for my
oh,
father, it
like
was,
was there already like a Romanian community there,
there
or are
wasn't a
they kind of
large,
starting that from
there,
scratch? Or
there wasn't a very large community. There were some Romanians here. Most of the Romanians, they at the time had been either like on the coast, so New York, California. My father came here to Dallas for a job. He worked in corrugated paper, so he started working for international paper. And so it was really, they chose the area that they, Plano and Carrollton, because of the schools and because it was close to my father's job. It was a place that was welcoming to like my immigrant family, right? My mom didn't speak very well English at the time. And so it was welcoming, it was affordable. The schools were good, and my dad could get to work easy, right? And then we found more Romanians. We helped, we came together, we bought a piece of land in Colleyville, and that's where we established the Greek Orthodox Church, St. Mary's Greek Orthodox Church. And that church has now, I mean, it's a huge congregation with thousands of Romanians, and not just Romanians, but tons of people go there. So, yeah.
that's awesome. So you mentioned earlier being born in the United States, you're the only currently elected, Romanian American who could be president of the United States. Fun fact and pop quiz for you and for our listeners. Did you know that you would not be the first United States president that did not speak English as their first language?
Really?
Who was it? That's the pop quiz for you and for listeners. Who was the first United States president that did not speak English as a first language?
Oh man, I
Tick,
don't
tick.
even want to guess wrong. I'm scared.
Martin Van Buren. Martin Van
Okay,
Buren
that would
spoke,
not have been my guess.
I know he spoke Dutch at home. Anyways, I found out that fact the other day and it tied in. So glad that you're here. So now you're through the legislative session. We might move into a special legislative session that
Mm.
looks like it's going to be based on public education. Do you have any intel on that other folks that are just kind of randomly reading the news may not be aware of?
Yeah, so we are going to have another session. It is going to be in October. I'll just say I'm 99% certain of it, because you never know with the state legislature. Um, I've attended a couple of bill signing ceremonies with the governor where he's alluded that. So I know that that's coming up. I'm honored to have been appointed to the HDC Public Education Committee, and looking forward to working with my colleagues on creating legislation that reflects our true values as Texans. I'm afraid
And
this.
and and for folks who aren't familiar, HDC is House Democratic Caucus, right?
Right, right. So the Speaker of the House has appointed a bipartisan committee that took testimony and created their legislative recommendations. And so the House Democratic Caucus has created their own committee that's going to also listen to constituents and kind of do the same thing, so that we're prepared that when we show up as a minority party, that we have very well thought out legislation that we know can be implemented, that we know we have support on, and so that we can bring a debate and bring a conversation to the House floor. Part of the issue that we have being in the minority party is that we're not allowed to have conversations, deep dives in conversations, and so we need to be prepared and hold Republicans' feet to the fire, to allow us to have discourse, to allow us to have conversation and dialogue and debate. And so you have to present something. You have to present a policy idea, and that's what we're working on together to make sure that anything that gets passed is equitable, that anything that gets passed affects public schools and private schools the same way, right? We see that there's a large disparity between those two things. And I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to fight against vouchers. We have seen vouchers in other states complete. I mean, the data there is not good for vouchers, unfortunately, And so we need to take that data to the House floor. We need to show. I spoke about Arizona earlier. Arizona was one of the first states to implement vouchers. Their governor is now saying we need to roll some of these vouchers back because our budget can't support that. And we had a surplus this session. We were fortunate to have a $33 billion surplus. We need to make sure that we're passing policies that can be implemented in perpetuity, and that we don't have to keep coming back to the table every year and recalculate. We need to make sure that the money that we're spending has a return on its investment. And we haven't seen vouchers have that strong return on the investments.
On the topic of that $33 billion surplus, you were one of the co-authors on Representative Bryant's tax cut plan that he proposed, the Democratic tax bill that was kind of counter to the Republican tax bill last month. We were not live as a podcast at that point. We were on break still. So people aren't super familiar with it. But in that bill, you actually had, and Representative Bryant and the other co-authors had, a mechanism to provide a tax rebate to renters in the state of Texas that make up 40% of Texans.
Yes.
Really frustrating that we weren't able
yep.
to see that.
I mean, look.
So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, look, I was honored to join author that property tax bill, because that would have given not just homeowners, renters, that would have hit everything that we needed to hit. All the people that helped contribute to the $33 billion surplus that we saw would have seen some type of relief, especially renters. It was unfortunate that bill didn't pass. What was even more unfortunate is when we tried to break that bill up and amend the current property tax that was passed, they wouldn't even accept amendments that would have strengthened the property tax bill that we passed. I'll give you a perfect example. I offered an amendment around taxparency for renters. Basically, this is something that we've seen initiated in other states. It's just letting the renters know how much relief was passed on to them if they were to request it from their landlord. This is a taxparency measure. This is just to hold landlords accountable, and so that we can say that we did the job that we did. And it was unfortunate to see that it wasn't accepted. Just simple transparency and accountability measure for renters. The property tax bill that John Bryan and I proposed, as well as Ana Maria Ramos, Cristina Morales, Vicki Goodwin, it would have had a $200,000 property tax exemption. And it would have also increased the basic allotment by $1,000. Those simple measures would have had an even higher return for owners of property in the state of Texas, because we know that the largest portion of our property taxes comes from schools, right? So by raising that basic allotment, that would have been instantaneous property tax relief. And it would have been property tax relief that would have held in perpetuity, right? We're not going to have to come back to you in 2-3 years and say, hey, vote for me, I'm going to pass the largest property tax relief bill in human history, right?
Well, and this is a great example of, this is Democrats fighting to give you double the tax relief, but Republicans walk around always saying, Democrats want to tax you to death. Democrats are, but if you actually look at the applicability of some of the things that you are trying to accomplish, you are trying to give twice the tax relief to Texas folks than what Republicans were trying to give.
Right, because it's I'm engaged to a former CPA, and he's very good at accounting. And so it's not about like how you're spending the money, it's where you're spending the money to make sure that you're going to have leverage, that money is going to hold, right? We know that property values are going up. We don't want to see that our property values are going down. The problem is that the state isn't making the right investments, and the state sometimes gives incentives to the wrong people, like corporations. And specifically corporations that aren't headquartered in Texas. That's the issues that we really need to address. So yeah, we can do better, and that's why we need to elect more Democrats.
And I know that myself and all of our viewers will be fighting to do just that, and hopefully we can get you more colleagues. I have one more topic before I want to go into everyone's favorite segment. Um, the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, which is the Tea Party caucus, announced last week that he would not be running for reelection. Are you going to miss Matt Schaefer?
um okay, so look, I'm not look, I some of the closest people that I could work with, that would listen to me, some of the Republicans, like, we became friends. Like, I'll call them my friends, right? Then there were other Republicans that you would go to them and you would like be like, okay, I'm gonna at least attempt this, right? I'm gonna at least attempt to cross the aisle and be like, hey, I have this bill. It's bringing insurance for first episode psychosis, right? Or whatever it is that you're working on, public safety, things like that. I can go to Matt. I could go to Matt, and I always knew that he was going to give me an honest answer. Let's just say that. I always knew that he was going to give me the answer, and so at the end of the day, look, I'm just happy to be on the I'm just happy to be there and fight for the people of House District 70. I wish him the best of luck. I never know. He might run for Senate. He did say that if Senator Hughes decides to run for higher office, that we'll see him in the Senate. So I look forward to working with Matt in the Senate if he gets there on any kind of legislation that brings results back to our constituents.
Wow. You're so much more diplomatic than you are when you were a third mic on Pod Bless Texas, Mihaela Plesa. Good work.
Well,
We're
look,
really
I will tell you, some of I worked, one of the bills that I passed, House Bill 2899, my public safety bill that dealt with street racing. My community has seen these street takeovers, these street exhibitions. It's a big issue for us. And so I'm really grateful to have that bill signed. The governor loved it so much, he had 2 bill signing ceremonies for it. And I worked with Senator Bob Hall on it. So, a good Plesa Hall bill, no one ever thought they would see the day, but I'm bringing bipartisanship to the chamber, and then that's the only thing we can hope for at this point.
State Representative Mihaela Plesa of House District 70 in Plano, Texas. We're just tickled that you took the time out of your day to join us here on Pod Bless Texas. But you don't get to go yet because you have to participate in everybody's favorite segment. It's called Obsessed.
Yes.
Obsessed, where each of us will talk about one news story from the week, whether it's politics or was it that we've been completely obsessed with. Lillian Salerno isn't here, so for today, we're going to start with Mihaela Plesa. Mihaela Plesa, what is something this week you've been completely obsessed with?
You know what? I hate to say it because I don't like to give this person any press ever, but man, Trump, he is just, is he going to turn himself in on Friday? 41 counts. I mean, it's some juicy reading. Look, is he going to even do the debate? He's going to be with Tucker Carlson. Not right. Not he's. I don't even know what he's doing now, but it's all entertaining to me.
The best part of it is that when he turns himself in, they're going to release his actual height and actual weight.
What about the size of his hands? Will they release that?
I don't think so. Here's the thing. I mean, whenever they put out the guy who's now a congressman, Congressman Jackson, who was his doctor, put out his like height and weight when he was president. It was clearly a lie, right? Because his height was 6'3", 235 pounds, which was me. I am 6'3", 235 pounds. And I'm looking at Donald Trump giving myself an eating disorder, and I was just terrified about it. I can't wait to find out what his actual weight is because I guarantee you it's not 235.
Well, it's his fourth indictment, so I'm just look. It's interesting. There's a lot of indictments going around. It's very interesting.
But it's also really sad for American public, right? That like we 90 I think he has 91 charges now, a former US president.
Yeah, and once again, that's kind of why we have to continue the fight because this is what we're fighting against. This is the kind of stuff that my family immigrated from, right? This is the things that we were talking about before, and so it's fascinating to see. I know that America is better than this, and I have no doubt that we will be rid of Trump pretty soon.
Well, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and Donald Trump won the prize of 91 charges. So that's exciting. Good obsessed, Representative Mihaela
Huh.
Plesa. Good
What's your
obsessed.
obsessed, Kendall?
My obsessed this week is the feud that's happening between the Republican Party of Texas and the Texas Young Republicans. Not a lot of news articles have been popping up about it, but it's
Oh,
juicy gossip, girl. And I'll tell you. So here's what happened. Chairman of the Republican Party is Matt Rinaldi. You may remember him as the guy that State Representative Julie Johnson clobbered in 2018
yes,
because
I
he was so
I
vitriolic.
more recent. Well, I also the first kind of things that I remember because I was a staffer when he was still a House member was the Sanctuary Cities bill and how he called ICE on protesters that were at the
Right.
Capitol. So that's the first thing that I remember about Matt.
Yeah, he's a full-blown garbage person, right? And so Matt Rinaldi is now the chair of the Republican Party because, they elevate. When Republicans send us their people, they aren't sending us their best. So he endorses against the president of the Texas Young Republicans, a guy named Hayden Paget, for national president of the Texas Young Republicans. And it lit a fury. They were pissed off about it. And so the Texas Young Republicans wrote a resolution that was a vote of no confidence against the chairman of the Republican Party, and then voted to unaffiliate themselves with the Republican Party of Texas. But they said they'd come
Oh,
back if Matt Rinaldi was gone, which I think is a common occurrence in Matt Rinaldi's life. People are like, I'm not coming back to that event unless Matt Rinaldi's not there.
well, you know what? Uh, yeah, that's a good obsess,
Yeah,
Kendall.
that was my obsessed this week because I love the
That's a good
infighting
obsess.
amongst
I
Republicans.
I had not heard that, but now that you have put that on my radar, I'm going to look into it a little bit more because yeah, that's that's very interesting. Wow.
We seem to forget, we see ourselves and Democrats squabbling and fighting a lot, but we forget Republicans do the same thing. And a lot of times it's 10 times worse. And I wish them nothing but the worst. I hope they continue to fall apart. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, I'll go back to the thing that I started with, which is Democrats need to row in the same direction. We have the wind at our
Yeah.
back. We're winning on all the right issues. People are tired of extremism. They're tired of crooks in leadership, and so it's our job to get to work, register voters, get them out voting, and bring change to our communities.
That's right. And that was Obsessed.
Yes.
State Representative Mihaela Plesa of House District 70, thank you so much for joining. What we didn't mention today is that your House district is not by any means just some shoe in. You actually won with 50.8% of the vote. Is that accurate?
Yes, and we're working really hard to make sure that we keep House District 70 a blue district. We've been working really hard, and I look forward to continuing to serve the constituents of House District 70 in this next special session and in the next legislative session as well.
So if people wanted to support you and your campaign, make contributions, do what they can to help out, where would they go to do that?
absolutely. Look, you guys should follow me on all of our social media platforms. It's at Plesa for Texas. Plesa for Texas. And that is the same across all platforms, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook. Is it X, or are we still calling it Twitter? I don't know what we're calling it.
I'm calling it Twitter.
Okay, so
I'm not
Twitter,
playing.
and then we're on Threads. We have everything. Please register for our newsletter. You can go sign on at our website, plesafortexas.com. Look forward to having you guys at our next town hall next month, letting you guys know everything that we've been doing for you guys. And at our events, we're going to have a healthcare event. We're going to have a pet adoption event. So yeah, sign up for our newsletter and look forward to seeing you guys on the campaign trail.
That's awesome. And if people wanted to follow me, they can follow me on all the social media platforms at Kendall Scudder. You can follow the podcast on all the platforms at Pod Bless Texas. Go into the App Store, give us 5-star ratings. I know we're not up in the Apple Store yet. Hopefully by the time that y'all are listening to this, you're like, what are you talking about? I'm listening to this in the Apple Store. But we're having issues on the comeback, guys. I'm working with Apple. It's been a real pain in the butt. But on all the platforms, Spotify, wherever you want to go, give us a 5-star rating. Help us keep this sucker going. You can also become a patron on patreon.com. Are there any other items I'm forgetting to talk about, Mihaela Plesa?
No, let's just go get to work. Let's go.
Let's go get to work.
Texas is a battleground state this election cycle. We can do it.
Yeah, so on behalf of myself, State Representative Mihaela Plesa, and all the Pod Bless Texas family, I hope y'all have a blessed week. Thanks for joining us, Mihaela.
Bye, guys.